Shalom and welcome to Shukul Da'at. I'm Rabbi Josh Rose. This Shabbat's Torah portion gives us a chance to explore the relationship between what we might call the purely religious, say the realm of Torah study or personal conduct and prayer practice, for example, and the realm of public ethics, that is specifically what our Torah portion mentions as obligations of society to its poor. I want to use some passages and some reflections about Passover to argue not that our tradition holds that the realm of ethics is as important as spirituality or religion, but rather that the realm of ethics and religion cannot be separated in the Jewish tradition. So the Torah portion for this week is from the book of Devarim, or Deuteronomy. Now normally we'd be reading Acharei Mot, which is a Torah portion from the book of Leviticus, but because this coming Shabbat is the 8th day of Passover, there is a special reading. And like all the special readings for the Chagim, or for the holy days, this one also mentions the holiday that's relevant to it, which is Passover. The portion closes with a discussion of the calendar and the pilgrimage holidays, including Pesach. But that's not the only part that's relevant to this particular Chag, this holiday, as we will see. But before exploring that, I want to remind us how we began Pesach this past Friday night. When we sat down to our Seder, we get ready, we get to the beginning of the telling of our story, that is the Magid section, and before we even begin telling that story, we begin with this declaration: Halach ma'anya di achlu avhatnab ara dimitzrayim. This is the bread of poverty, or sometimes translated the bread of affliction. We say this as we're holding up a matzah, that our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Anyone who is famished should come and eat. Anyone who is in need should come and partake of the Pesach offering. Now we are here. Next year we will be in the land of Israel. This year we are slaves. Next year we will be a free people. So already before the telling of the story, the ethical implications of the story are paramount. In this festival, we celebrate that God brought us out from the suffering and pain that we experienced into freedom. And the Haggadah is asking us, by including this passage, before you sit down and celebrate what God did for you, do you have poor people at your table? Did you invite in folks who have nothing and who most need an invitation? Once you've opened your heart and home, then and only then can you begin telling the story. So that's the first night of Pesach. That's how we begin. Now, this coming Shabbat, as I said, is the last day, the 8th day. And what do we find in the Torah portion? Well, the Torah reading begins with a discussion of tithing and making contributions to God. But then in chapter 15, we get to some extraordinary verses, radical verses, and I'm just going to read a few of them. Every 7th year you shall practice remission of debts. This shall be the nature of the remission. Every creditor shall remit the due that he claims from his fellow. He shall not pursue his fellow or kinsman for repayment, for the remission proclaimed is of God. That is, debts have to be forgiven. It goes on, there shall be no needy among you, since the Lord your God will bless you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you as a hereditary portion, that is the land of Israel, if only you heed the Lord your God and take care to keep all of his instruction that I enjoin upon you this day. So it seems that our enjoyment of the blessing is contingent upon our working, that there's no needy among us. It goes on. Do not harden your heart and shut your hand against your needy kinsman. Rather, you must open your hand and lend him sufficient for whatever he needs. Beware lest you harbor the base thought, the 7th year, the year of remission, is approaching, so that you are mean to your needy kinsman and give him nothing. He will cry out to God against you, and you will incur guilt. Give to him readily and have no regrets when you do so. So the Torah is saying, not only do you have to forgive debts, when somebody comes to you and asks for help, you can't say, well, next year I have to forgive debts, so I'm not going to help this person out. And then finally, open your hand to the poor and needy kinsmen in your land. and then this section closes, if a fellow Hebrew man or woman is sold to you, he shall serve you 6 years, and in the 7th year you shall set him free. When you do set him free, do not let him go empty-handed. Okay, so that was a lot, and we could spend all of our time just talking about any one of those verses, and there's an enormous amount within each one. But I wanted to give you a sense of the overview: remission of debts, freeing of slaves so that there's not a permanent underclass, providing for the poor, freeing servants, supplying them with something to help them on their way out the door, and of course, tzedakah. Now, with regard to this last piece, which I'm emphasizing here in part because the laws of tzedakah from the Jewish tradition as they're developed in the Talmud really focus on the verses, some of the verses that I just read. With regard to these, the Rambam, or Maimonides, in his famous legal code, summarizes the Talmudic debate, which derives from the Torah a much more expansive ethic of supporting the poor than one might think from what I just read. Rambam says, in summarizing the halachic teachings of the Talmud, one is commanded to give to a poor person according to what he lacks. If he has no clothes, they clothe him. If he has no utensils for a house, they buy them for him. If he does not have a wife, they arrange a marriage for him. If the poor person is a woman, they arrange a husband for marriage for her. Even if it was the custom of a person who was rich but is now become poor to ride on a horse with a servant running in front of him, and this is a person who fell from his station, they, that is the community, buy him a horse to ride upon and a servant to run in front of him, as it is said, and then he quotes the Torah, give sufficient for whatever he needs. You are not commanded to fill whatever he lacks, but you are commanded to fill whatever he lacks, but you are not commanded to make him wealthy. So that's his summary of the far-reaching and I think quite radical ethic of tzedakah. We don't just throw a crumb here and there, but we take seriously the dignity and the needs and even the psychological situation of the person. So far, I've pointed to two passages that emphasize social ethics in connection to Pesach. Again, first was the Haggadah itself, which opens by welcoming the poor, and now this passage from the Torah portion, which tradition says is to be read on the last day of Pesach, and both of which clearly and unambiguously point to our obligation to people who are needy and suffering. But I began this podcast with the claim that not only were ethics important, but that they are inseparable from what is commonly called religion or spirituality, and I want to turn now to that point. To get there, let's start with the fact that immediately after the passage that I just read, that we might think of as social legislation, the Torah turns suddenly to different matters, and it says, Kol bechor asher yiv'aled bivkarcha, V'tzoncha hazachar takdish laRashem Elokecha. You shall consecrate to the Lord your God all male firstlings that are born in your herd and in your flock. You must not work your firstling ox or shear your firstling sheep. So why is the passage on caring for the poor and freeing slaves followed by the apparently unrelated passage addressing religious obligations to make offerings to God? Well, Moshe Alshich, the 16th century commentator who lived in Sfat, Israel, gives a powerful interpretation of this strange adjacency. And essentially, he says that the Torah is saying, look, I, God, brought you out of Egypt, and just as you must not be so ungrateful for the liberation from slavery, that you are not to treat your own servants in the same way and hold them indefinitely, but you too must free them. And just as I sustained you when I brought you out, and I'm requiring you to sustain the servants that you free, now I'm commanding you to not be ungrateful at this time of Passover. For all of the wealth that I provided you and saved you from the death of the firstborn in Egypt, he says, all of that, and saving your firstborn cattle, even though all of the other firstborn in Egypt were struck down, now I'm asking you to sanctify the firstborn animals to me. So without going into the details too much of this passage, essentially what Alshich is saying is that there is a direct connection between our relationship to God and the social ethics that appear in chapter 15. And so that's why it fits perfectly in his mind that the Torah turns from a discussion of social ethics and obligations to the poor suddenly to religious matters, because he says that they're deeply connected. Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, now to go to the next level, the 20th century head of modern Orthodoxy known simply as the Rav, writes about the relationship between ethics and religiosity in his essay, Tzedakah, Brotherhood and Fellowship. Our own reflection on what God has done for us makes us aware of divine love, he writes. And he goes on, love, the emotion that redeems man from his sadness and desolation, instills joy in his heart and makes his face radiant, does not belong to him. It belongs to God. One who derives benefit from his own personality and his happiness without recognizing that it has all come to him from the Master of all, and that all his love and his capacity to love come from God, likewise desecrates the sacred and misappropriates property belonging to the Holy of Holies. One who uses this divine gift only for his own benefit, that is the divine gift of love and all of the blessings that God has given us. One who shows unbridled love to spouse, children, parents, and siblings, but does not extend some of this joy to others who are not family members, that one thereby defrauds God, steals the hidden light God has given him, and defiles the most exalted and purest emotion. One must give of one's love to others who need it. In the context of tzedakah, the Torah said, and here Soloveitchik quotes our Torah portion, "You shall surely open your hand to the needy." What Soloveitchik describes in terms of an ethic of gratitude has its root in the recognition that all things belong to God. Not only our wealth, our property, but our very personalities, our very being, belong to God. God's oneness pervades all things and grounds all things. In the realm of ethics, refusing to recognize this is ingratitude, and selfishly holding on to our money as others suffer flies in the face of the deepest reality and truth about God and the world. As inheritors of the teaching that God is the source of all things, Jews are obligated to demonstrate this truth in the realm of ethics. Kindness, compassion, tzedakah. These are not secondary values that come as obligations we fulfill because the God we love has asked us to do so. They are acts that demonstrate our understanding that God is one, and that move us closer to the creation of a world where the unity of God is manifest in the realm of human relations. We cannot separate the realm of ethics from the realm of religion. In my understanding of this principle, Jews, including and maybe even especially rabbis, are obligated to speak out about issues of decency, fairness, poverty, and justice. We are to overcome that which divides us and causes pain, and this message is perhaps most importantly and forcefully expressed over the holiday of Pesach, when we are supposed to meditate on this deepest reality. I'll close with a beautiful thought from Rebbe Nachman of Breslov. Our Haftarah reading this Shabbat contains the well-known passage from Isaiah. "The wolf shall lie down with the lamb, the leopard lie down with the kid, the calf, the beast of prey, and the fatling together, with a little boy to herd them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion, like the ox, shall eat straw. A babe shall play over a viper's hole, and an infant pass his hand over an adder's den. In all of my sacred mount, nothing evil or vile shall be done, for the land shall be filled with devotion to the Lord as water covers the sea." Rebbe Nachman picks up on the essence of this Haftarah, the deepest truth underlying all things that we have not yet realized. He teaches that the development of true religious consciousness will lead us to overcome all divisions and create unity on earth. He says, the greater the spiritual awareness, or da'at in Hebrew, the greater the peace. This is because peace is dependent upon consciousness or awareness. As it is written in Isaiah, the wolf will lie down with the lamb, for the earth will be filled with awareness. The peace in this world will be so amazing, he writes, that opposites will be capable of dwelling together because of the great awareness that will prevail then. Through the awareness, peace is increased because anger and cruelty are eliminated through this consciousness or this awareness. This is because anger and cruelty result from an absence of consciousness. As it is written, anger abides in the bosom of fools. But the more that consciousness is increased, the more there is an increase of compassion and peace. As a result, everyone's livelihood is earned effortlessly through the aspect of God makes your borders peaceful and satiates you with choice wheat, as it says in Psalms. May Passover refresh our awareness of God's unity and renew our desire to serve God by using our own creativity, our energy, our money, and all that we have to establish the unity of God and God's name. Chag Pesach Sameach, and have a beautiful Shabbos. Thanks so much for listening.